The Galactic Empire had conquered thousands of worlds, its fleet spreading across the void like an unstoppable tide. No species had ever stood against them and survived. Their warships, sleek and vast, were the pinnacle of technological advancement, energy shields impenetrable, plasma cannons capable of reducing planets to cinders, artificial intelligence guiding every maneuver with ruthless precision. To defy the Empire was to invite annihilation. Admiral Zyvar stood on the command deck of the Oblivion Spear, the flagship of the Imperial Armada. Around him, 50 warships hovered in perfect formation, a display of overwhelming force. His eyes, sharp as the blade at his hip, flicked to the holomap before him. A single blinking marker pulsed against the backdrop of the stars, the last known position of the human warship. 1 ship. Against 50. The very thought was absurd. He turned to his second-in-command, Vice Admiral Karsus, who studied the data feed with detached amusement. A single human vessel, holding its ground against an Imperial fleet, Zyvar said, voice rich with disdain. Do they seek death, or are they simply too primitive to understand its inevitable? Karsus smirked. Perhaps they believe they can negotiate. Humans are known for their stubbornness, though not their intelligence. Zyvar allowed himself a chuckle. Let's dissuade them of that notion. Power up weapons. Signal the fleet to advance. The command echoed through the cavernous warship. Engines flared, plasma cores hummed, and the fleet began its march through the void. The Oblivion Spear, at the vanguard, moved with the lethality of a predator that had long forgotten the taste of failure. And then, the HSS Valiant arrived. It emerged from the depths of space, slipping out of a shimmering wormhole like a phantom. The ship was smaller than Zyvar expected, a war-scarred frigate of outdated design. No grand battlements, no massive arrays of weaponry. It should have been insignificant. And yet, something about it sent a whisper of unease through the bridge. Scan that ship, Zyvar ordered. A few moments later, a technician hesitated before reporting. Sir, our scans are inconclusive. The ship's hull is made of an unfamiliar composite. Energy readings fluctuate in ways that don't align with known patterns. Zyvar's brow furrowed. What nonsense is this? Every ship leaves a signature. This one doesn't, the technician replied, voice uneasy. It's like it exists in 2 places at once. Karsus scoffed. Ridiculous. Send them a final warning. Across the void, a transmission pulsed through the vacuum. Human vessel, you are surrounded by the fleet of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender immediately and submit to inspection, or you will be destroyed. A moment of silence followed. Then, a response. You don't understand what you're facing. The words were spoken with eerie calm, devoid of arrogance, fear, or desperation. Just a statement of fact. Zyvar narrowed his eyes. Their bravado is amusing. Fire a warning shot. One of the Imperial battlecruisers discharged a low-power plasma bolt, intended to graze the hull of the Valiant, a show of force without immediate destruction. But something impossible happened. The bolt vanished. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Simply erased from existence. Confusion spread through the bridge. Karsus turned to the technicians. Did they activate some kind of defensive field? The reply was hesitant. No. Or rather, not one we can detect. Before Zyvar could demand further explanation, the Valiant moved. It didn't accelerate like a normal ship, didn't bank or adjust its thrusters. It simply ceased to be in one place and appeared in another, shifting across the battlefield in a way that defied all known laws of motion. One moment, it hovered 100 kilometers from the fleet. The next, it was behind them. Alarms blared. They've flanked us. Karsus barked. Impossible. Zyvar snapped. No ship can. A burst of energy erupted from the Valiant, not a beam or projectile, but a distortion in space itself. The nearest Imperial cruiser shuddered violently, its hull warping as if reality itself had turned against it. Then, in a blink, it was gone. Not destroyed. Not in ruins. Just gone, erased as though it had never been. Silence fell over the bridge. Then, chaos. Admiral, Requiem Dawn has vanished. No wreckage, no debris. Our AI systems are failing. Targeting solutions are fluctuating. Zyvar felt the first true tendrils of unease coil around his chest. How are they doing this? No one had an answer. The Valiant struck again. This time, 3 more ships dissolved into the void, removed from existence with the same chilling precision. Panic spread through the Imperial fleet. Ships tried to reposition, but their movements faltered. Navigation systems refused to function. Some fired blindly, but their weapons missed or simply failed to activate. It was as if the fundamental rules of engagement had shifted, and the Empire no longer understood the game they were playing. Zyvar gritted his teeth. Full bombardment. Fire everything we have. The fleet obeyed, unleashing a storm of plasma, railfire, and energy lances. The Valiant should have been obliterated 1,000 times over. But it didn't evade in the way a normal ship would. Instead, it flickered, appearing between the attacks as if it existed in multiple points of space simultaneously. The assault passed through empty air. "They're untouchable," Karsus whispered, all trace of arrogance gone. The human ship sent another transmission. "I warned you." Then, without further sound or fury, another 5 Imperial warships vanished. Zyvar clenched his fists. What is that ship? The answer eluded them. But one thing was certain. The Empire had never feared humanity. Until now. Admiral Zyvar had seen battles waged on a scale that shattered planets, conflicts where fleets of thousands clashed in cataclysms of fire and steel. He had never once believed in miracles or curses, only in power, in the cold, unerring logic of superior technology and strategy. But as the HSS Valiant danced through his fleet like a ghost, unbound by the laws that governed reality, doubt slithered into his mind like a living thing. Aboard the Oblivion Spear, the bridge was a storm of voices, panicked reports colliding with one another as officers struggled to make sense of the chaos. The human ship was not merely evading, it was unmaking the Empire's might, carving through their ranks without resistance. Entire warships disappeared into the abyss, their destruction leaving no wreckage, no lingering energy signatures, only void, as though they had never existed. Vice Admiral Karsus gripped the edge of the tactical console, his knuckles white. "It's impossible. There has to be an explanation." "We need one now," Zyvar growled. He turned to the lead science officer. "What are we fighting?" The technician hesitated before responding. "Sir, the best I can determine, they are not using conventional weaponry. Our sensors fail to register any projectile, beam, or known energy signature. But space itself distorts around them. It's as if they're rewriting reality." Zyvar's stomach twisted. That was not an answer. That was madness. The Valiant flickered again, shifting positions without acceleration. One moment, it hovered near the remnants of the forward fleet. The next, it was directly above the Oblivion Spear, its midnight hull blotting out the distant stars. Zyvar barely had time to register its movement before the ship pulsed. The bridge lights dimmed, the artificial gravity wavered, and for a fraction of a second, the entire flagship lurched, as though the universe itself had buckled beneath it. Then the alarms screamed. "Systems failing. Engines at 40%. Primary weapon arrays are offline. Admiral, something is inside our ship." Zyvar's head snapped toward the viewport. Outside, the Valiant remained unmoving, but deep within the Oblivion Spear, something was spreading. The holodisplays flickered, data streams corrupting with symbols that did not belong to any Imperial language. A presence slithered through the ship systems, not mechanical, not artificial, but something else, something alive. Karsus cursed. "Is it a cyber attack?" The science officer shook her head, her face pale. "No, it's something else. Something deeper." Then the screams started. Zyvar turned sharply. The security feeds showed crew members collapsing, clutching their heads. Some convulsed, others simply stopped moving, eyes wide in silent terror. It was not physical damage. It was something inside them, something their minds could not comprehend. Zyvar gritted his teeth, forcing the rising panic into submission. "Shut down all external data links. Cut the ship's AI from the network." "Already done." Karsus snapped. "It's not stopping." The Valiant spoke again, its transmission bypassing every firewall, every safeguard, as if it had never needed permission to enter their systems. "You assume your reality is absolute." The voice of Commander Elias Drake came through, calm as a whisper against the tide of destruction. "That your understanding of the universe is complete. It isn't." The Oblivion spear trembled. Zyvar turned to his weapons officer. "Fire everything we have." The order should have unleashed a storm of destruction, a barrage of plasma and kinetic rounds that could reduce continents to dust. But nothing happened. The weapons did not fire. The targeting systems remained unresponsive. It was as if the ship itself refused to obey. The Valiant pulsed once more, and another Imperial destroyer flickered and vanished, as though reality had erased it from the ledger of existence. Zyvar slammed his fist against the console. "Damn you! What are you?" For the first time, the human commander's voice carried something more than cold certainty. A whisper of regret. "The future." Then the Valiant moved, not through the void, but through something deeper. Space itself rippled like disturbed water, and suddenly it was within the center of the Imperial formation. The remaining warships scrambled to reposition, but it was useless. One by one, they were unmade, their matter unraveling, their presence in the universe snuffed out without fire or explosion. Zyvar's breath came in slow, measured inhales, his years of discipline barely holding him together. He had never considered retreat in his life. But survival was no longer a matter of pride, it was necessity. He turned to Karsus. "Order the fleet to disengage. Any ship that can retreat, do it now." Karsus hesitated. "Sir, now." The command was sent. The remaining warships turned, engines burning at full capacity, streaking toward the nearest jump points. But as they fled, the Valiant remained motionless, as if watching, as if waiting. For a single moment, Zyvar allowed himself to believe they would escape. Then, space itself cracked. A rift opened, not a wormhole, not a distortion, but a tear in the fabric of existence. Light bent around it, spiraling inward like a singularity of infinite depth. The retreating ships were caught in its pull, dragged into the abyss with no resistance. No screams, no distress signals. Just silence, and then nothing. Zyvar's mouth went dry. His fleet was gone. Only the Oblivion spear remained. The Valiant finally moved, its obsidian hull gliding forward to loom before the broken flagship. Zyvar straightened, breathing evenly despite the weight of his failure pressing against him. A final transmission came through, carrying the voice of Elias Drake. "You were warned." Then the Valiant was gone, slipping into the void like a shadow swallowed by the night. Zyvar stared into the emptiness that had once been his fleet. For the first time in his long career, he felt something foreign and unwelcome settle deep within him. Fear. Admiral Zyvar stood at the shattered remains of his command deck, the flickering emergency lights casting jagged shadows across the wreckage. The Oblivion spear drifted in the void, the last survivor of what had once been an invincible fleet. Every other warship, 50 of the Empire's most advanced vessels, had been erased, devoured by a force beyond comprehension. The silence was suffocating. No distress signals. No wreckage. Nothing remained but the cold certainty of defeat. The Valiant had vanished. No trace of its existence remained, no energy signature to track, no residual distortions in space. It had simply left, its work complete. Zyvar clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. A lone human ship had humbled the greatest fleet in the galaxy. Not through overwhelming firepower, not through superior numbers, but through a force that should not have existed. The crew that remained on the Oblivion spear was broken. Some stood frozen at their stations, staring blankly at consoles that no longer functioned. Others slumped against walls, trembling in silent horror. Zyvar could feel their gazes, their unspoken questions. What now? What was left? He had no answers. Karsus pulled himself to his feet, wiping blood from a gash across his forehead. His voice, usually edged with confidence, was hollow. "Admiral, what do we tell command?" The thought twisted in Zyvar's gut. How did one explain the unexplainable? The Empire did not accept failure. It did not tolerate weakness. He had led the might of their forces into battle, and he had lost. No, not lost. Losing implied a fight had taken place. This had been something else entirely. The Empire had come as conquerors. They had left as nothing. "We tell them the truth," Zyvar said, the words bitter on his tongue. Karsus gave a hollow laugh. "The truth? That we were defeated by a single human ship? That it wielded power beyond anything in the known universe? They won't believe it. They'll say we're mad, that we sabotaged the mission, that we let fear break us." "They can say whatever they like," Zyvar muttered. "The truth remains." Karsus looked away, his jaw tight. He understood. They both did. The Empire did not believe in failure because it had never faced an enemy capable of truly challenging it. But humanity had become something else. Something the Empire had not accounted for. A transmission request appeared on the ruined command display. Zyvar hesitated, then activated it. A distorted image flickered to life, the face of a high-ranking Imperial official forming from the static. "Admiral Zyvar," the voice came, cold and clipped. "We expected your victory report cycles ago. Explain the delay." Zyvar took a breath. He had served the Empire his entire life. He had carried its banners, crushed its enemies, executed its will without question. And now, for the first time, he doubted. He met the official's gaze, his voice steady. "The fleet is gone." A pause. The official's expression did not change, but Zyvar could feel the disbelief, the tension behind those unreadable eyes. "Gone. Destroyed. Unmade. A single human warship engaged our forces. We never had a chance." The official's image flickered slightly, as if the very notion had disrupted the transmission. "You expect us to believe that one ship, one human ship, annihilated the Empire's most advanced fleet?" Zyvar exhaled slowly. "Believe what you will. It doesn't change the reality of what happened." The silence stretched. Finally, the official spoke again, their tone unreadable. "Return to the core systems immediately. You will answer for this failure." The transmission cut. Zyvar exhaled, slow and steady. He had expected as much. The Empire would not accept this outcome. They would call it cowardice, incompetence, sabotage, anything but the truth. He had no illusions about his fate. He would be interrogated, judged, perhaps executed. But that did not matter. Because something far greater had shifted this day. Humanity was no longer a footnote in the Empire's conquests. No longer a species to be dismissed. They had done the impossible, defied the invincible. And if one ship could bring an entire fleet to ruin, what else were they capable of? The answer lurked at the edge of his thoughts, a whisper of dread that would not leave him. The Empire had always believed itself to be the pinnacle of existence, the sole masters of the stars. It had crushed civilizations, rewritten histories, silenced entire species beneath its heel. But it had never truly faced an equal. Until now. As the crippled Oblivion Spear began its slow, humiliating retreat through the empty void, Zyvar found himself staring into the darkness, his mind repeating a single thought. What if humanity was not just a new enemy? What if they were something far worse?